of some sort. There are cookies right by the restrooms. Now again, our last session is the future of agriculture. This is as we learned from our keynote speaker this morning, a key partnership between education, investment, innovation, and the private sector. And the educational component is really key, and that's what we have represented here. Again, the County of Monterey, the University of California, the State University, and Hartnell College. And if you haven't looked at Hartnell College lately, I mean, their ag enrollment is booming. They've got the facilities, and they've got the talent. This young lady, she's going to tell you, I mean, she's a pistol. I heard all about it, so we're glad you're here. Anyhow, our moderator for this session, actually, I just want to introduce Brad as a great friend and really a champion of building the ag program at CSU Monterey Bay. It's moving, it's growing fast. So please help me in introducing Brad Martin as our moderator today. Brad?
Thanks. So if you happen to lose me in the crowd, I'm really easy to spot today because I'm the only one in a tie. Yes. Bring a tie to an ag event like this is sort of like bringing a knife to a gunfight, right? You're just absolutely not got the right tools. But that's okay. So the topic here is the future of ag. Particularly around science and research and how those are affecting what it's going to mean to be a grower in the future and what ag is going to look like in the valley going into the future. I've got just a couple of opening remarks to make, and then I'll introduce our panelists and ask them to speak to the topic of the future of ag from their area. I actually want to start out by just taking a second to look about 200 years backwards, a little over 200 years backwards. A guy by the name of Thomas Malthus in 1798 predicted that there would be widespread famine because he said the power of population growth is greater than the ability of the earth to increase the food supply. And when Thomas Malthus said that, there were 1 billion people on the entire planet. At this point, there's a little over 6 billion, almost 7 billion people on the planet, and we're headed for 10 billion people by the end of the century. And we have yet to meet the widespread famine and don't expect to meet the widespread famine that Malthus says we'd get 200 years ago. So for sure what we know is that ag is going to be a growth industry in the future, thanks to the population happening. So what did he miss? He missed science and technology. He missed the fact that how crops were grown in 1800 doesn't look very much like crops are being grown at this point in time, and it's probably going to look very different at the end of the century than it does now. And we're doing this, we've increased ag production over the last 200 years with a continuously declining workforce, a declining number of acres under cultivation, and that's going to continue, increasingly costly inputs, and that's going to continue. Ag still has managed to increase output. And it's done that through science and research. And science and research not only have to address the issue that we've got to feed about, 66% more people by the end of the century than we're feeding right now, but it also has to deal with doing that in the face of all that's going on with food safety, with the whole fresh supply chain. The wonderful thing about growing food around here is if you don't sell it today, it won't be there tomorrow to sell. And that's the fresh supply chain. I grew up in the upper Midwest where if you can't sell it today, you throw it in a silo and you sell it some months or some years from now. That's not how it goes here. In continuing environmental issues of water, there were mentioned, several of these mentioned in the last panel, issues of water, increasing regulation, air issues, global warming, increasing land restrictions, etc. All of those are going to have to be dealt with by science and by research. So the panel we have today is made up of 3 different people. First is Dr. Eric Brennan. Eric grew up in Papua New Guinea. He holds a BS in agronomy and social science from the University of Hawaii, which is like the one place on the planet that I'd rather be than California. A master's in horticulture from Cornell University, and a PhD in plant biology from UC Davis. He's a research horticulturist and lead scientist in organic production at the USDA's Agricultural Research Service in Salinas, where he's worked since 2001, so about 13 years now. His current research focuses 100% on organic vegetable and strawberry production, with emphasis on cover crops, weed and soil fertility management, and biological control of insect pests. This research occurs on farms in the region and at the 25 acres of certified organic land that he manages at the USDA ARS. He's passionate about long-term research and effective communication of practical research results to farmers and other stakeholders. Prior to joining the USDA, Eric worked as a farm advisor in Thailand, so he definitely has a global view, and conducted research on tree propagation, plant breeding, and plant-insect interactions. So let me now turn it over for a few minutes to Eric Brennan.
I was thinking that would be the second one to go. So, anyway, it's a pleasure to always have a chance to talk to people about one of my passions, which is what I think is a lot of your passions also, that's agriculture. Although I grew up in a much different place than where I now work, I think a lot of us got into ag because we liked plants and we liked animals and different aspects of agriculture since we were very young. And that was definitely the case with me. It's something that I'll probably do until the day I die, regardless of whether or not I'm paid to do it or not. Because I love food and I love understanding where the food comes from, and that's really what motivated me to get into this line of work. It's good to see a lot of future farmers in America, people here. I was an FFA member in Hawaii when I was an undergraduate there, or actually a high school student at the university, at Kailua High School. So what I want to talk about a little bit today is just a little perspective from my background in research. I'm a data-based person, obviously, because that's what I get paid to do. I don't get paid to produce crops that are marketable. I get paid to produce research that's basically believable among my peers, which are other scientists, and also to produce research that hopefully is also practical to growers. So if the research I'm conducting doesn't apply to growers, then I need to change the direction I'm going. That's my personal philosophy. And so what I try to do is make sure that the research I'm doing is very applied. And is meeting sort of two main areas of focus. It occurs within an organic context. At the USDA research farm on Spence Road, we have 25 acres or 22 acres of certified land there and another 3 acres at another site. But although it focuses on organic production, quite honestly, a lot of it is focused on just improving sustainability of conventional systems as well. So I do a lot of cover crop research, which is equally applicable to organic as well as conventional. A lot of weed management research. And one thing I think is going to be real critical as we move forward into agriculture, and I definitely don't have all the answers or even many of them, but I think good science-based information will be critical. And I'm very concerned that our science research in ag is focused on long-term issues. As a scientist, the pressure I'm under, as you all actually pay my salary. You may not know it, but when you pay your taxes in another 15 days or so, you're paying part of my salary. I'm a federally funded scientist. And the pressure I'm under as a federal scientist is to produce a certain number of publications per year. The easiest way to do that is to do short-term things. Things that only last, say, 1 year, 2 years. or 3 years. But short-term research provides some answers, but it often misleads us. And I can take some of my own publications and give you examples of things that I said 10 years ago that I thought were true, that I now don't believe are true anymore. I'll give you one real simple example. Merced rye, which is the most common cover crop probably planted in Salinas Valley. I used to think that higher seeding rates were important for Merced rye to suppress weeds enough that we would not be increasing the weediness of a field. I wrote a paper that I did in collaboration with my friend Richard Smith here, Ron Yakota with Tanamarananto, and another colleague back in 2003, I think, where we thought that higher seeding rates would be important there. That was based on a 2-year study. We now have a study that's about 11 years old where we've looked at different seeding rates for several different cover crops in rotation with vegetables. And what we found is actually 80 pounds an acre is adequate. You don't need to put more seed in if you're growing Merced rye. It's adequate for Merced rye, but it's not adequate for legume rye mixtures. So I was wrong when it came to rye, but I was right when it came to these legume cereal mixtures. So I would have never known that answer if I hadn't conducted the research for a longer period of time. Because what we found was over time our weeding costs went up every single year where we were using certain cover crops, but they went down where we were using other ones. So one of my big concerns is that as we move towards the future of ag, we're basing it on solid data. And that's data that's not collected over just 1 or 2 years. It's sort of like, if you think of your body, you wouldn't want to base your diet on studies that were done for only 2 years or on one site. Basically, one individual or even 5 individuals. You'd want to base it on huge studies that were done across a large spectrum of society. And I think that's going to be one of the challenges. How do you do long-term research in a cost-effective way? That's a big, big challenge. One way I've tried to do it, and I think is I'm going to try to continue doing, is to do it in collaboration with growers, where growers are providing part of the inputs and we're providing the data collection capacity. So long-term isn't all that's there, but it's a huge part of it. There are certain questions we can answer quickly, and that's where short-term studies would come in. But we need a good balance. That's sort of some of my general thoughts. I think just in general, our research is going to have to become more efficient. And that's where actually collaborating with growers helps. But we've also got to be more efficient at getting the information from publications like what I produce out to growers so that growers can actually use the information. I can't tell you how many times I get calls from growers and they ask me questions about say cover crop seeding rates or weed management, and I'm answering the same question again and again and again, and what it makes me realize is I'm actually failing to get the information that I've helped to generate with other colleagues out to growers, and that's where I'm really keen on things like YouTube. For example, I think every presentation I give should be on YouTube so that if you're a grower or FFA person and you don't have the time to go to that presentation, you can go and watch it on YouTube. And if you don't understand what I said the first time and really wanted to hear it a second time, you could back up and go and do that again. So that's sort of just some general thoughts that I've got.
Very good. Thank you very much.